we've got Jill Jones Soderman on, and me, you, and Jill, we're all caught up in a New Jersey web. Now, Jill, before we get to what happened, I got to read this because this is one of the most amazing things that I've read in terms of a legal filing. I, J. Badal, of full age, do hereby certify as follows. I am the plaintiff in the above captioned matter, and as such have full knowledge of the statements set here forth. I filed a certification in further support of my order to show cause, converted to a motion on short notice for an order to seal the records for this matter, placing restraints on the dissemination of information relating to this matter, requiring the Foundation for Children of Family Courts, Jill Jones Soderman, and that foundation, that's the thing you run, and other authors to remove their articles from all sources, prohibit them from publishing same. Again, I want to scroll up. As you can see, this is J. Bradley Badal versus Kristen Badal. Your name, Jill, is not among the litigants. Am I right? So
That's right. I'm not a party to the case.
He's asking for you to remove articles after you have published them, even though you're not a party to the case. The actions of the defendant, he's talking about his ex-wife, since my application show the absolute necessity of these requests to be granted. The defendant continues to share information regarding this litigation with media sources, including pleadings and even more concerning audio recordings of the proceedings in this matter. Following my initial order to show cause, an article was written by Richard Lutman, that's you, with the New York News Press entitled, quote, Major Police Supply Corruption, Dirty Deals, Betrayals, IRS Fraud, and New Jersey Cover-Up, see Exhibit 1. It accuses me of being a criminal, including accusations of money laundering. It writes, quote, in 2022, Badal turned his predatory business model on his own wife, Kristen. After forcing her to rebuild his Florida empire, he staged a domestic violence claim, seized their son at home, and filed fraudulent documents in family court. None of this is true. It is all lies, easily disproven by actual evidence in this matter, including evidence that was previously provided to the court and that the defendant had not actually done any of the work on the business since the first year of our marriage, another exhibit. Even then, she was barely working. The other claims were already disproven in my first order to show cause on this issue. The article also states, quote, with his lawyer, Jessica Sprague, and Judge Peter Bogart in his pocket, Badal weaponized Morris County's legal system to crush Kristen and silence any media coverage. We talked about this with the Lauren the Mortician case, weaponizing court, crushing, silencing media coverage. This is all vague, subjective, not actionable. It attaches financial notes that the defendant took and put same into the media without any consideration of the court rules, which make financial records like case information statements, protected document, prohibited from being disclosed. The article includes direct quotes from the defendant. The article states, quote, Kristen Badal says Brad forged a prenuptial agreement, lied to judges, and staged domestic violence claims to seize their son, assets, and Florida home. Again, none of this is true, and it is clear the defendant is fueling this media involvement via clearly less than credible sources. I think he's talking about you. The article states, quote, Brad's attorney, Jessica Ragnos Sprague, filed court papers demanding a court order on Kristen and journalists covering the case. She threatened podcasts, media outlets, and court critics with contempt and legal action. Clearly, the only way this author has this information was directly from the defendant. Wait, this is the best part. There was a second article posted by Michael Volpe.
Oh, no.
Quote, Censorship Crusade Busted, New Jersey Family Court Order Update. I don't think I wrote that.
You did. I took what you wrote.
You put me as an author. I don't remember.
I took what you wrote, and I gave it a flashy title.
Right. All right. This article includes a video with recorded excerpts from legal proceedings with Judge Bogart that defendant clearly provided to them, and pages from court documents. This is a direct violation of the, quote, Supreme Court guidelines on electronic devices in the courtroom. See Exhibit D. We're going to talk about that. And the Supreme Court guideline on media access and electronic devices in New Jersey court promulgated directive, whatever the directive is. Notably, the latter specifically states courts have substantial authority to regulate media access to court proceedings, as well as access to and use of electronic devices for media broadcast and other purposes. The guidelines govern in the absence of any exercise of such authority. They do not limit or modify the court's existing authority to impose greater restriction in a particular matter or to permit an exception to a general limitation on regulation. These authors are well aware of the court's directive, and in fact, the last article includes a link to the article titled, quote, New Jersey Courts Exposed Secret Heat List Targets Family Court Litigants and Journalists. This article includes a letter to Mr. Lutman advising him that he must remove recordings or risk referral for criminal prosecution. Interesting. Mr. Volpe's article states, quote, Richard detailed a recent proposed order from New Jersey which may force him to remove an article he had previously published. He already said that the only people he listens to are his mother, the Archbishop, and Donald Trump, and none of them are particularly fond of New Jersey courts. The court should be aware that I was informed about the existence of the first article attached hereto by one of my suppliers. The defendant is deliberately and intentionally attempting to interfere with my business. I think he's suggesting tortious interference, and is clearly harassing me and my attorney where there is a restraining order in place. I would respectfully submit that her actions are significant enough that they should be referred to the prosecutor's office as a violation of the restraining order. The defendant notes in her response to my order to show cause that she is receiving legal advice and assistance, however, does not reveal the source of same, and is clearly using a ghostwriter. I'm not sure why that's illegal. It appears she is using your foundation to assist her legally, even though their director, Ms. Jones Soderman, has already been issued a cease and desist letter by the state of law for engaging in the unlawful practice of law, and has had her social worker license revoked for falsely posing as a doctor. The defendant should be required to disclose who this counsel is. Why should she be required to disclose who's helping her? Contrary to the defendant's certification, this court has substantial authority to restrict media access, coverage, and broadcasting. Again, while the First Amendment protects free speech, it does not protect false speech. The information being reported by these alleged news sources is all false information being provided directly to them by the defendant, including confidential documentation, inappropriate recordings, copies of court pleadings that are not immediately accessible to the public. Notably, my attorney has advised that there is presently a rule change pending for the next rules update where all family court documents would be considered protected. In regard to the bar on her communication to JR, I assume that's their son, it was outlined in detail in my last certification. I specifically heard Kristen saying to JR that she would not be able to see him because I was not complying with Florida law. She continues to make promises to him about when she's going to see him, despite the fact that she has failed to comply with court orders and refused herself to return to supervised parenting time. She is the maker of her own circumstances. Instead of simply following court orders, she tells JR that it is my fault she is not seeing him. This is a direct violation of prior court orders, and there needs to be some teeth to that order. Threat of losing all contact unless she complies and ensures and adheres. She claims that she is in the process of completing a psychiatric evaluation, but there's zero evidence of same. As indicated in our very first appearance on this matter in December of 2022, any expert who does not speak with me or have complete picture of the matter would hold little weight. I continue to remain very concerned about her psychiatric state as well as her sobriety. In a recent call with JR, she remained on the call while not engaged in any conversation with him. But while she was constantly running with her tongue along her teeth, consistent with behavior of someone who's on cocaine. Even reading her own submitted documents has me and should have the court concerned with her mental state. She writes in paragraph 18 of certification that, quote, anyone who bothers to read the report will see that the psychologist does not say that I'm addicted to either drugs or alcohol. This report specifically diagnosed her diagnostic impression, severe alcohol use disorder, mild cocaine use disorder, unspecified anxiety disorder. The disorder doesn't mean she's using them. There is clearly no misrepresentation as those were her actual diagnoses. She argues that this is in reference to my submission that the facts are uncontroverted. This is clearly untrue based upon the plain language of the report. By way of another example of false information that she has written in her certification, that now has been mirrored in published parroted articles, is her continuous claim that the United States Department of Treasury has determined that the prenuptial agreement is a forgery. This is patently false. See another exhibit. Based upon the foregoing, I submit that my application needs to be granted for the protection of multiple people. The defendant is spewing false information to non-rebuttable news sources in an attempt to harass me. Nothing else. This is not in the court has to issue upon these requests. So what is he asking the court to do here?
Well, this was the hearing that went off on Monday, and basically, Michael, you know this because you emailed and I emailed Jessica Sprague. Yet I guess
wait, but he's saying
we're non-rebuttable.
That this is that there's no way to challenge this. Didn't we both email her and ask her to challenge this?
We did, and I know that Jill Jones Soderman, who's here, has contacted them to get explanations. I know that they've had every opportunity to speak.
I'm the authority on this, as the client subject is a client of the foundation. I'm the executive director of the foundation. The foundation deals with child victims and protective parents who are subject to family court violations of civil rights. This documentation, as far as I'm concerned, as a forensic expert and as a director of the foundation and as a psychotherapist and a psychoanalyst, and I will address those issues in a moment, as an expert, the documentation presented as read is nothing more than a screed of protest and defamatory material hurled against a protective, vulnerable parent without a response from her, and using a public forum, the court, to present a one-sided argument as represented by his attorney, who feels free to defame both the client and an organization that is defending her.
Let's talk about this Badal case. So Richard Lutman, as someone who had practiced law for a while, explain not what you think of what he filed, but what is he trying to get the court to do with this filing? What is he asking the court to do?
The procedural posture here is that Brad Badal is trying to tell the court in New Jersey, a family court in New Jersey, the Superior Court Family Division, where the only other party in this case is his ex-wife or his wife, who's still his wife, but they're estranged, Kristen Badal, and trying to get the court to say, well, you have the power as a judge to do a preliminary restraint upon speech and tell all these media outlets not to talk about this case, number one. And number two, the things that they've already said about the case that they've published, you have the power to tell them to take it down off the internet, to unpublish it, and to remove it from public consumption and from the marketplace of ideas. That, in a nutshell, was the point and the gist of what Brad Badal was asking.
What do you think of his legal argument?
It's not what I think of his legal argument. It's what Judge Farber thought of his legal argument.
Before we get to Judge Farber, what do you think of his legal argument?
Well, it would be an excellent legal argument in the Soviet Union, in any totalitarian place where there's no such thing as free speech. I think it's an excellent argument. I think Stalin himself would give him a Medal of Honor for an argument.
All right. Jill, you were dying to get in. What do you think of this legal filing that we spent about 15 minutes reading?
As I said, it's a screed that is meant to threaten and intimidate by proxy. And it's not going to work. The foundation will not ever take down material that is well-based, fact-based, with evidence, not from the client, but independent. We have thousands of pages of independent recordings, videos, statements from experts. It's a very well-based and very well documented case, which is terrible because I do think that both parents care very deeply about the child.
Now, Mr. Lutman, he also in that screed alleges that you illegally recorded court hearings. Do you want to answer that?
I've never illegally recorded court hearings, and frankly,
we're looking at a court hearing. Is this court hearing right here illegally recorded?
I would go down to the first snippet of there and hear what the judge said, because there's a rule that's if you go down a little bit, the rule actually, the rule that we have there, we cited it, but that's the default rule. And actually, the judge has complete control. And in the very beginning of the case, Jessica Sprague, the attorney, asked the court to exclude the media. And the judge turned around and said, that's against American jurisprudence. That's Jessica
Sprague. All right. So the judge, and that's this guy right here, in effect, what he did was he countered every argument this guy said. That courtrooms are open. The media is allowed to have court documents, listen in a court hearing, and have recordings of court hearings. Am I right?
That's right.
All right. Now, what else happened in this hearing?
That was the first thing that happened. They asked for the court to be closed, and the court wasn't closed, and there were the members of the media, and the Judge Farber actually said, the person's not trying to videotape the court hearing or anything else that's on the media. I think there were several media people. They're trying to just relay the information, number one. And so he said, I'm opening this up. I'm not closing down this courtroom. This courtroom is open. But then after that, there was a whole bunch of arguments. There were about 10 or so motions and cross motions that the court addressed based on different issues related to the case. And these issues were related to the case. And then he came back at the end of the issues about the First Amendment and the certification that we just saw. And that certification dealt with information that was put out and disseminated by Jill's Foundation for the Child Victims of the Family Courts, by myself, Richard Lutman, journalist, by you, Michael Volpe, journalist, by Marianne Petrie, podcast host and media member, and by others. And Riviere on Substack, on the Family Court Circus, on New York News Press, and on other platforms and outlets. And the fact is, he asked Jessica Sprague, the attorney in New Jersey, what basis do you have for me to grant the relief that you request? The remedy that you're requesting is an outlandish remedy. That is a remedy to say that I would like the speech to be preliminary restrained in the future, and then to be taken down, the stuff that's already there. And he says, I'm not going to do that. That's against the American rule. The second part was a question about a gag order, and a gag order. And if you click on that first right there, the first audio that you have up there, that's the very beginning. This is actually a very good point.
I understand that is media here by telephone. I understand that an application proper procedure wasn't followed for media involvement in this matter, and I would ask that they be removed.
I'm not removing anybody. Court proceedings are open to the public. That is the national rule. We'll get to your application, but I'm not blocking anybody. We're not asking. He's not trying to photograph Thank you. I'm not removing anybody. If we get to issues that are sensitive to the child during the course of the morning, I may block people out, but not right now.
Okay.
That was the judge's ruling, and that's the proper rule. And that was
But
the rule.
that's on keeping you in the courtroom.
And then later,
what did
later
he rule on her actual?
Go to the last. You go to the last snippet. That's the last one. The last one. That's his ruling.
Divorce litigant, you know, that doesn't discuss all the aspects of their divorce with their friends, their parents, everybody under the sun. Who do you know that doesn't do that?
I understand that, Your Honor, but she's taking this to an extreme level. And I don't think the court can disagree what she's done is quite frankly heinous.
First prayer on this application was to seal the record entirely, restrain the defendant from discussing the litigation with any individual other than hired or consulted counsel, medical professionals, or therapists who will maintain confidentiality. Rule 5:3-2 permits the court to protect a portion of the proceedings that deals with the child and authorizes sealings in those cases. The court would not seal the entire record here. And you may be correct, I wasn't familiar with the rules coming out tomorrow, so it all may change tomorrow, but this is today. In addition, the plaintiff didn't identify exactly what he requests be sealed because the court will not seal the entire record. For each aspect that plaintiff seeks sealed, he must demonstrate a good cause reason specifically not generally related to the child. That said, both parties are bound by statutes and rules and the Supreme Court edicts. There is a process to be able to record proceedings which neither party has undertaken. A violation by unauthorized recording is subject to up to 6 months incarceration or a $1,000 fine. It would appear that the defendant has violated this and shall cease and desist. Rule 1:38-2D excludes from public access case information statements, confidential litigant forms, information sheets, medical, psychological, and alcohol and drug dependency records, child parenting time plans, etc. It has all sorts of things that in that area the court rules are protected and not allowed to be disseminated. To order Foundation for Child Victims of Family Courts and Jill Jones Soderman to remove their article entitled The Unraveling of Justice in Badal versus Badal, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not doing that. The entity is not before us, and although Ms. Sprague argues she can certainly bring that to the appellate division, that I have a right to control media, I'm not doing that. That's not the way we do stuff in this country. There's a difference between redressing a private wrong or something which has occurred and is already printed and seeking to suppress publication in advance. It's what has previously been provided as libelous and remedies are available. This is not it. Same thing with the next part for Odyssey.com, Marianne Petrie and Slam the Gavel. Same rules apply to them. Same thing with the Family Court Circus and Richard Luthman.
And so he implies, and so does Sprague, that what you're doing is defamatory. So, Mr. Luthman, answer that. You claim that this guy's a criminal. He says that you suggest he's involved in money laundering. He says that's defamatory. Before we get to that, have you received a cease and desist letter? Anything that suggests that there may be a lawsuit coming?
I sent these people a request for comment before I published. I sent them some of the evidence. They've seen the evidence. They actually, in court pleadings, have not denied that this is legitimate evidence. The handwritten statements that talk about Bruce Spendell, who is a known tax felon by the Eastern District of New York, who cheated a whole bunch of money out of his major auto dealerships and who's related in business to Major Police Supply that Brad Badal owns. They're business partners. They have a business relationship. It's in their own hand. He has not come out and denied that. I have a good faith reporting ability and a good faith reporting presumption based on those materials, based on the third party aspect, based on the work of the Eastern District of New York and the U.S. attorneys there, the criminal prosecution, based on the other information I've received and reviewed, part of the stuff that's in the public record, and the lack of denial by Mr. Badal, the lack of any type of particularized statement by Ms. Sprague or any of the other attorneys for Mr. Badal that anything is not true. They haven't told me what is not true. So it could be defamatory. It could be very harmful to Mr. Badal. The fact is that the truth is the ultimate and absolute defense to defamation. If it's true, then that's the absolute defense. Secondarily, as a member of the media who reports in good faith, who asked beforehand, who has continued to ask, and who has continued to not only be not given answers by the defendant, Mr. Badal, and not given answers by his attorney, but someone who has been stonewalled and then thrust into court proceedings. They asked for affirmative relief against me, against you, against Jill Jones Soderman, against the entities, against the news outlets, against the media. This woman, Jessica Sprague, I don't know what crackerjack box she got a law degree out of, but she says that a judge sitting in New Jersey has the right to go nationwide and to tell people who aren't in front of the court, there's no jurisdiction, that they can control the media. It's out of control. The woman, I don't understand what she's smoking. I'd like some of it, but I don't understand what she's smoking that she came up with an argument like that with a straight face in front of that to a judge and didn't get laughed out of not just the courtroom,
Well, she got
laughed out of the county, out of the state of New Jersey. I just don't understand it. Don't understand it at all.
She got left out of it. Jill, he also suggested that your articles were defamatory. You want to answer that?
They're based on fact and evidence and extensive knowledge of the actors in the cases.
No, wait, I want to give a perfect example. Put the article back up, Michael, and go towards the bottom. Okay, we have what a situation with Kristen Badal, where the husband for years has continually been stating that her mental problems, and go down to the bottom of the article, keep going, and he said that there are mental problems related to abuse, and all sorts of drug abuse, everything else. Go down a little further to the next section. That's Brad Badal. Okay, he doesn't look like a savory character to begin with. And so there have been the allegations from the beginning by Kristen Badal that Brad Badal was abusive. And so look what was written in that article. Brad Badal, quote, not a criminal, not a wife beater. That is what his claims have been through his counsel, that he's not a criminal and that he's not a wife beater. That's stated in that article. You go down a little bit more. And Cliff Colgan was the expert, okay, that they hired to say that all these bad things were done by Kristen Badal, that she was an alcoholic, she was a drunk. This guy is not a doctor. Now, you go down here to the Brain Injury Consulting, and Gregory Hipkin, the doctor, MD, PhD, who works with, and Jill can speak about this in a moment, the Foundation for the Child Victims of the Family Courts, doing brain scans and showing the trauma related to brain scans. And he basically says, nuclear brain scan SPECT imaging suggests objective evidence of organic brain damage resulting based on current information, more probably than not from an altercation in her previous domestic arrangement. What does that read to me? In good faith, I say, I think this guy beat the shit out of her. I don't think she's an alcoholic, a cocaine addict. She's the victim of abuse. Go down further, and we have pictures. Go down further, we have pictures of the abuse. That doesn't happen by accident. We have a picture of Kristen Badal's head split open because of the abuse. This man threw hatchets at her. This man is an evil bastard, okay? And he's lucky he's in the courts and he's not in the pavement someplace, because this shit should not happen, where he's hijacked the courts. Pieces of crap like Peter Bogart, who has a political relationship with the wife and Badal, that have allowed this abuse to be perpetuated and institutionalized. It's a disgrace. My hope is that we will get justice here. And my hope is that some of these people who are knowingly complicit in this cover-up and this court fraud and this corruption are walked out in bracelets, hopefully by Alina Hama, the new New Jersey U.S. attorney, the interim U.S. attorney, or by some other people in the Justice Department, because this is a disgrace how an abused woman can be gaslighted and with the help of the courts to say that she has drug and alcohol abuse, where they mandate drug and alcohol abuse and testing and everything else. And really, she got the shit beat out of her by a wife-beating husband with millions of dollars, and that's paid everybody off.
Jill,
and let me add, there are police reports and other documentation, but the cases that the foundation deals with involve pictures, medical records, and medical documentation of women who are beaten and children who are beaten to a bloody fucking pulp. Their bodies are unrecognizable for the abuse. I have to deal with children who are screaming and yelling and begging not to be sent off to abusive parents, and judges who are saying, I don't care. You are going to go off to mother, father, abuser. And we have the evidence, and I speak up for them against judges, police, prosecutors, and I become the foil and the target for false allegations. I have the pictures and the documentation, and we will not allow it to be suppressed. So if it means that I'm the lightning rod for people to come after and claim that my training of from 1970 to 2000 whatever 7, well, my whole life, my whole ongoing life was not real, is the price that I pay to speak truth to power and the consequences thereof, which is the subject of my book. But the people who are being paid off and making tons of money, the psychologists, the judges who are paid back channel money through Title 4D and 4E by transferring innocent children and vulnerable parents, men and women, into the custody of abusers who traffic and take advantage of children and vulnerable subjects. The foundation litigates and prosecutes without fear or favor, and we will go all the way to the Supreme Court. My work with the foundation began with the suicide death of a child, and we support and pursue justice for men, women, and children who are subjects of constitutional violations. And we're blessed to have you, Mr. Volpe, and you, Mr. Luthman, who are brave and incredibly talented voices of the public, unintimidated and fair to the nth degree. I mean, your intellect and your incisiveness in terms of presenting fair and concise arguments I think are just beyond amazing. We've never had any such support. You don't see ProPublica doing the depth of writing that you do. So I'm thrilled with you, and I'm really very grateful to you to have you on today. Thank you so much.
Rick, you want to end it with anything else you want to add on this case?
There's much more, I think, in the Badal case. There's also much more related to what we're looking at both in New Jersey, right? And there's a lot going on there, but all across the country.